Through the My Toyota store, you can enjoy hassle-free online buying for your Toyota genuine parts and all make parts. With an electronic parts catalog containing over 400,000 Toyota genuine parts, all accessible through a model serial search, so you can take the guesswork out of identifying the correct part for your equipment. Get started today at shop.toyotaforklift.com. That's shop.toyotaforklift.com.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And on today's episode, I am going to be joined by Dennis Sanacore, and he is the Senior VP of Sales at the Miner Corporation. And today we're going to talk about the dock, the first part of the warehouse where that inventory hits. And we're going to talk about dock doors as well, specifically something that I don't think we've gone into detail on the show before. And Dennis is going to tell us all about what's going on with dock doors, what type of options are out there, how to make the right selection, and also what's going on around in that same area of the dock, and some interesting innovations, technologies that are coming into play. And we're also going to dive into something that's really important, I think, in this area too, is preventative maintenance. So we're going to welcome Dennis onto the show. So how are you today, sir?
Doing well, and thank you for having me today.
Definitely happy to get you on here. Happy to talk about this. I think that, we can't have a warehouse without a dock and dock doors, right? So something very critical, something important to talk about within the industry. But before we dive into this subject and this topic, why don't you give us kind of an overview of the Miner Corporation and what it is that you're all focused on?
Yeah, we're primarily a national service company. We've been around for 57 years, started down in Texas a long time ago by Phil Miner's grandfather. And we're an industrial services company that we really have a customer first mindset and really just try and figure out how to be best in class in service, design services, installation, like of some of the products you talked about, doors and dock levelers. And really just, one of our key things is we are kind of niche, like where we go in and develop specific programs for customers. So that's where our tagline is docks, doors, and more. And that's kind of where the more comes from, is this specialization that we kind of customize programs for key customers of ours that are Fortune 500 and even not Fortune 500 companies.
Interesting. Docks, doors, and more. Love the tagline. Definitely.
Yes.
So let's talk about these dock doors here. I mean, so when we look at it, I guess a common bystander, right? It's just a door, it's like a garage door, basically, on a big building, right? So, but talk to us a little bit more about, maybe like what kind of intricacies are there around dock doors, and why is it important maybe to think a little further about the type of door you're going to put in, and what kind of options are there out there in the market? I mean, to have some variability.
It's a good question. Like, people think a door is a door, right? But obviously in the business, there's a uniqueness to every single application, which causes challenges for customers. Like, so if you have an air conditioned space versus a not air conditioned space, they have different types of doors that are insulated. So it keeps the air conditioning in the building and keeps the heat out. Some don't really care. So it's a non-air conditioned space. And a lot of times they leave their doors open. So they just have a non-insulated door. Some environments are 3 shifts. Some are 2, some are 1. So if you have a 1 shift operation where it's 1 or 2 loads a day, you don't need this big beefy door. Typically, you get away with a standard, regular sectional door, they call them. So there's sectional, there's rolling steel, there's high speed doors, there's impactable doors. So for the high frequency locations, there's doors that are impactable. So you can actually, the panels are built into the actual frames and cables and all that stuff, and they can get hit and they kind of reset themselves. So
oh, really?
From a damage standpoint, I would say 80 to 90% of damage at the dock doors are those bottom two panels and those tracks that are protecting the rollers and stuff going up and down. So there's an opportunity to kind of create guards to protect the tracks, and there's an opportunity for these impactable door sections. If you want to just do a couple sections, you could do that, or if you want to do a full door, you can do that. There's other people that put high-speed doors at their loading docks where they just want a productivity measure going in and out. Door goes up, comes down, up, down, based off of motion and pull cords and all kind of different kinds of activations. And then the unique part about some of it as well is there's bug screen doors where you can kind of, if you want ventilation in a warehouse, you can have a bug screen door where it kind of rolls down. It's like a shutter. It gives you the ventilation. It's a specific fabric that has breathability in it, so air can come in, but it keeps bugs out. So there's so much uniqueness to it. It really depends around what the customer is doing. Do they want a safety? Do they want security? Do they want energy? Like all of those things matter when you're trying to figure out which type of door to put in. But there's a lot of uniqueness to applications, and you got to have the right design to kind of make sure you keep your productivity going in these warehouses.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's pretty interesting. I actually had not heard of the Impactable before. And I'll say in a previous operation I worked in, we certainly could have used those. We had a number of panels that we had to replace from time to time. And I think, what you said is very true. Like those bottom panels, I mean, they get beat up, either whether it's, somebody's pushing, trying to pick up a pallet on the dock and the pallet just happens to, at the end of the line just pushes into it, or those tracks too get twisted from time to time. So I'm curious, I mean, from the perspective of if you're doing high volume and, you want something that's going to last, because that would be when something like that would happen, I would say like, that would be a detriment to our operation because we had specific doors where these things were happening. And now all of a sudden we have one door that's not functional until we can get a replacement panel put in place. And now we're kind of down a door, and we had very little flexibility on other doors that would make sense from an operational flow perspective. So, I mean, if you were going to put in, for a high volume operation, doing a lot of in and out, I mean, if you were going to put in the ideal door, the dream dock door, what kind of setup would you do?
Yeah, again, it's really depend on the application and what the frequency is around those doors. But I think it's an impactable bottom panel, or it's an impactable door with track protection. Now, remember, you got to have wind loads in certain parts of the country, so you have to have certain types of struts that go on the doors, and some of those impactable doors are loaded for wind load and some aren't, right? So you got to make sure you got the right manufacturer you're partnering with to make sure you're wind load compliant, and that you are able to kind of maximize the efficiency for the customer. Because what you don't want is like panels always flopping out and then they have to stop and reset too, right? So you got to find a good quality manufacturer and really just come in with an impactable bottom section or two, or a full impact with some sort of a track protection. That would be my recommendation. I have seen it work quite nicely in many types of accounts. And I know a lot of Fortune 500 companies are starting to look more and more at the impactable doors. They're more expensive. They're probably 2 to 3 times the cost of a regular sectional door. But also, if you think about the less maintenance costs that you have and the less downtime, to your point, if you only have 10, 12 dock positions and 1 or 2 of them are down, that really, really hurts the loading and the loading efficiencies at the warehouse and puts stress in the warehouse. And like you said, you're backing up pallets, pushing them into doors. Maybe you even damage more doors, right? So it really helps to have those kind of higher end products to kind of maximize efficiencies. And I think that's what companies or Fortune 500 are starting to look at, spending a little more on the front end to get less maintenance and downtime on the back end.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's such a great point there too, because I think like you said early in the conversation, I mean, people are like, a door's a door, right? But when you put it in those terms of like kind of the operational impacts that you can have by, maybe not having a door that's more secure or safer or impactable, like you were mentioning, it can really be detrimental in some cases to do that. And I've experienced myself, as I said earlier. So as we look at the area around the dock door, we have things that are involved there, whether it's, a certain type of guarding, dock levelers, aprons on the outside, covers from the weather and things like that. Talk to us a little bit about some of the, options that are there. And as we look at the operation, what type of things should we consider when looking at, I guess maybe you could say these, I don't know what you call them, dock accessories, dock door accessories, attachments, or whatever you want to call them.
Accessories is good.
Yeah.
Dock accessories is good. That's kind of what it's, known as too. So there's different components around the dock. There's obviously the levelers, which is the bridge that goes in and out, and you have the door, right, that goes up and down. And a lot of companies have started looking at vehicle restraints again. Like this was something that was created back in the 80s. It was approved. It was an alternate to wheel chocks back then. And now a lot of people are looking at vehicle restraints, which actually holds the trailers to the docks for loading and unloading, because a lot of accidents are happening these days with the creep, and the air ride trailers are kind of moving away from the dock. Forklifts are falling in between that gap of the bed of the trailer and the 4-foot drop off. So it's a little bit of a dangerous area. So those restraints help. And then what you're talking about are those dock seals or shelters, seal you butt up to, and a shelter you penetrate through. And then there's components like rain guards or rain opportunities that kind of sit above it. So if you have these decline approaches and you have trailers backed in and rain is coming down, it a lot of times could get in and damage products. So these rain applicators that sit on top of these seals and shelters kind of push the water off to the side and doesn't allow it to go into the building, especially if you have a decline loading dock. It's really important. But I got to tell you, the one thing that I've really been working on feverishly with a lot of companies right now is energy. Interesting. And I have some notes here that we were working with a company on trying to kind of seal the perimeter, inside, side levelers, top of doors, all this kind of stuff, so that their air conditioning, with the cost of electricity these days, is very, very expensive. So we've come up with a couple of different programs for some really big companies. And one of the programs, we just got these numbers back from them. It's going to save them $5 million a year. Wow. It's going to reduce emissions by 21,000 metric tons. It helps the forest and trees. And then obviously, all different kinds of things with that is a positive too. So that's just one program. It's saving them like $75,000 a facility. So it's just been a really big, it's bigger than we thought, right? We just thought, let's try and seal these up and figure out a way to keep the energy in and keep the other stuff out. And this has allowed them to kind of spend in other areas, invest back into their own business, whether that's through safety, security, or whatever else they need by building out these energy savings.
We'll be back after a quick break.
When it comes to systems, you want something that will start showing results fast. You're looking for a tool that can enable your 3PL or warehouse to get to the next level. So why wait? That's why Carton Cloud provides supported, fast onboarding that can have your WMS up and running in hours, not months. Jump into Carton Cloud's easy-to-use workflows for all of your services, including cross-docking, serialized inventory tracking, e-commerce order fulfillment, and more. This software is built by logistics people for logistics people, and those logistics people are standing by to help train you and support you so that you can be successful with your customer. With 24/7 real-time reporting and free online training, you need to check out Carton Cloud for your operation. Take the next step in your operation by heading to cartoncloud.com/free-demo or click the link in the show notes. Very interesting. I mean, it sounds like almost similar to putting some weather stripping around in your house in the drafty areas, like in a sense, right? So how do you go about like assessing something like that and recognizing that there's like a potential, I guess, problem there for like an organization? Yeah, basically, if you're in an organization and if you have a controlled space, an air space, and then you look for gaps underneath your doors, on the sides of your door frames. And I think that's the easiest way to do it. There's also thermal guns, like you could put in side seals and then use these thermal guns to show that energy is not getting in and staying out. Like there's different tools you can get, and you can actually plug them right in your phone and use them for, just got to get the app and so forth. But I think at the end of the day, the easiest way to do it is just walk your docks and just take a, evaluation of if you see light when your doors are closed and your levelers are in their pits, you're having an energy
just going, it's almost like leaving your front door open with air conditioning on. It's like that similar of a waste of energy. So
very interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's interesting too, just to hear the amount of potential savings there as well, because I think that's something maybe you're not always like thinking about, right? In that sense. And obviously, like you mentioned, I mean, you're able to capture that savings and then invest that into other aspects of your operation to help you improve overall efficiency. I mean, I think is a great thing. So it can just lead to other future cost savings over time too. So very interesting there. And I think it's interesting to see kind of the different options in this area as well. But I think one thing too that's important, and especially as we look at doors and we look at like dock levelers too, there's a lot of preventative maintenance there that should be taking place. And I think I've certainly seen some operations where maybe it's not taking place as often as it should. So give us a little kind of information around, what kind of preventative maintenance is really important in the dock area, and how do you kind of put together a solid plan to make sure that's happening when it's supposed to happen?
I like to say proactive maintenance versus preventative. You kind of get into like tricky intricacies there when you say preventative, but proactive or planned, right? You're trying to change your oil, fix things, make sure springs are adjusted, all those kind of things. Manufacturers recommend doing that quarterly. Again, it comes down to operational usage, trucks per day kind of thing. So you can get away with, twice a year, every three times a year, quarterly, whatever you want to do. A lot of the frequency uses that have 3 shifts do quarterly, but it's important to do the maintenance because, again, part of the door drift, springs aren't adjusted. They drift into the opening, forklifts go in, they bang the bottom panel, right? That happens all the time. Dock levelers, lips don't kick out because springs aren't adjusted or there isn't the right fluid in a hydraulic cylinder, whatever it is. Somebody tries to extend a lip with their fingers, they walk it down with a forklift and they could lose a finger, right? So from a safety standpoint, it's so important. And again, back to your point earlier about having productivity at the dock, if you only have 10 docks, and 2 are down, it just puts stress on the whole operation. And it's really important to make sure you're greasing, lubing, and adjusting these products, as often as you see fit for your operation. I think a lot of people today, like Miner does something a little bit unique. We've created an app called Safe Check, and it's a digitalization of your warehouse. So we're able to kind of go in and really use, an app and then utilizing electronic evidence to build the DNA of your facility and then create a customized website. So when you go to do your maintenance, you know exactly what's in your building. You can see a trend. You can scan the barcode that's on there. It kind of gives you the data of spend per dock, per asset, that kind of stuff. So we've trying to take maintenance to the next level by trying to digitize it and make it more customizable for all of our end users, and just make sure that the national accounts and everybody who needs that data, because it's such a data-driven decision today around spend and everything else, that we're providing that to our customers so that they can make it, educated decisions.
Interesting. Yeah. And I think that's cool that you developed an app, because I think that helps to give just the visualization and the reminder too, like to do these things. Like, because I think oftentimes it's, if you're trying to do it in-house, sometimes like gets overlooked or it gets pushed out because other things are going on, different priorities, and, having like an app to help you kind of assist and keeping it top of mind, I think is an important thing. I'm curious, I mean, in that regard, what would you say, I mean, it would be maybe the argument for doing like this kind of proactive maintenance, I'll say here, the way you like it, versus doing it in-house versus like having somebody come and do it for you as an external party?
I think in-house, a lot of people are trying to save money, but it's a tough time finding good employees that are capable of getting on a scissor lift 20 something feet in the air and adjusting springs, which is very dangerous. If you're not trained on this stuff, on hydraulics, electrical work, it's really a trade, right? Like, so you have to be educated, trained, and really know what you're doing. A lot of times people get under there and they don't really do it. Maybe they'll clean out the pits, but they won't, maybe they'll put some fluid in, maybe it's the wrong fluid. So I think just having the right expertise underneath your levelers, up in the air, adjusting those springs with the right adjustment tools. So you don't want anyone to get hurt or even worse, right? So that has happened for sure. And I think it's just those kind of things, employee safety, and really there's other things that they can be doing in a facility to be productive versus working on dock equipment. That's kind of what we do, right? That's what other companies out there do. And so sometimes it's just best to let those people do their jobs, right? It's like AC, air conditioner at your house. Like I'm not working on that, right? I want my air conditioning people that have a trusted relationship with and have been in business for a while to manage that stuff for me. Let me know what I need to do to make sure my air conditioner is at peak performance. And it's the same thing with dock equipment. It's just something that's dangerous if you're underneath there. It's dangerous up in the air, and you just got to be super, super cautious and know what you're doing. And if you don't, you're probably not doing the right maintenance, and you're probably not going to get the benefits of doing a proactive maintenance program, especially if you really kind of don't know the ins and outs of everything.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's good advice there too, because I've certainly seen where, some operations trying to do things in-house and like you said, like they don't necessarily have the proper training, and, maybe they're not doing the right things the right way, and they're trying to do some maintenance, but then actually end up, making it worse in a sense, or break something because they don't have that training. So I think it's smart to invest in, having someone that's an expert on that, be able to take care of it, because at the end of the day, it may seem like a simple thing in the grand scheme of everything, but when you have some detrimental things going on in those areas, if you don't have something working properly, it's slowing down your operation. It's ultimately affecting your bottom line, your overall productivity and efficiency. So I think it's important to take care of those things that are around you. So as we look at the dock area itself, and just the dock in general, whether it's the outside, the inside, the doors, the levelers, whatever, all the accessories there, I'm curious from you, your perspective, how do you see kind of this area evolving? What kind of technologies do you see kind of coming into play here, and what's really kind of making an impact, or do you think will make an impact in the next couple of years?
That's a really good question. And I've been in a lot of discussions and meetings of late around the warehouse of the future, right? What does it look like?
Yeah.
I know from a service standpoint, there's more data in the control panels, right? So the control panels are basically saying, hey, you need to go service this equipment. You X amount of cycles and this and that, right? So that data is starting to be built into control panels so that operators in warehouses know that, okay, it's time to kind of set up some maintenance time for our dock equipment. Let's schedule whatever. So that's happening for sure. It hasn't evolved all the way where we want it to be yet, but it's coming. It's part of packages now, and it'll be a big play in the future. So that data-driven, operational solution and kind of pause is coming with that. I think the other side of it, and you're probably familiar with some of this stuff because you do a lot with forklifts and you've talked to forklift companies, but there's laser guided vehicles, more and more play out there in the industry these days, trying to get more productivity out of automation in the warehouse. So even at the loading dock, it's starting to become more prevalent. And in the past, it was more robotics in some of these e-commerce warehouses and stuff. And you see all this really unique stuff flying around warehouses. Yeah. But right now it's at the loading dock, and they're trying to figure out ways to automate it, to make it more from a productivity driven, where they're going with wider levelers so they can pull 2 pallets off at once versus going in, pulling one, coming back, pulling another. So there's that side of it. There's just, like I talked earlier about, is the different types of interconnects. So it's becoming a system versus dock equipment, right? So a leveler will work, a restraint will work, a door will work, and it's like a system now. So there's a lot of going on as well. So it's automation, it's sequencing, and it's really data-driven maintenance solutions that are starting to kind of drive the warehouse.
Interesting. Yeah. I think it's interesting to see too. And like you said, there certainly is a lot of solutions now that are trying to automate and address the loading, unloading situation at the dock. And I think it's interesting you mentioned there, unloading 2 pallets at the same time, getting a wider leveler. Does that translate into needing a wider door opening as well? Or how does that work?
Yeah, bigger, wider, right? So it's wider is, the openings. Trucks are 8'6", so the door openings have to be a certain number, 10 feet, and then your depends on how wide the leveler manufacturing companies want to go, but 8 feet, 8.5 feet. I haven't seen 9, but maybe they're going to do 9 just to kind of max it up and get the best possible advantage to kind of go in and out with these laser guided vehicles. So yeah, that's happening for sure. And then obviously there's automation with other things in warehouses too. There's different uniquenesses around specific companies that have these little safety products, whether they're for forklifts or maybe there's different air purification systems that are going in to make air quality better for employees. There's different kinds of support mechanisms that are going out in the yard to kind of hold trailers in place from a safety standpoint. And they're trying to automate it with control panels and red light, green light packages. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot of automation. There's a lot of manufacturers working on a lot of different things that are trying to take this to the next level. And I feel like it's coming real soon. And there's a lot of indicators showing that currently.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's pretty interesting to see all I think it's one of the most exciting things about our industry right now is that, there's all this cutting technology that's coming out in like the world in general, but it's finding like these practical applications in our industry, which is pretty cool to see. So it'd be very interesting to see how that continues to evolve and, what the dock area and the warehouse in general of the future looks like. And really appreciate you coming on today, Dennis, and talking to us about all things dock doors, dock accessories, dock area, and just the future of warehousing too. Really insightful stuff and great tips too for people out there who have dock doors, which I'm assuming most of you, if you have a warehouse, you have some kind of dock door. So very interesting stuff. And if people are interested to hear more from you or learn more about the Miner Corporation, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, it's just minercorp.com. Just go to the website. There's plenty of information there. They could always, you're more than welcome to give out my email information if they want to contact me direct and just talk through a situation. Be more happy to do that as well. And I think you need a new t-shirt. I think it should say warehouses are getting sexier.
Oh, okay.
There's some enhancements coming. Maybe there's a little chance to update back there. You know what I mean? Get something new and fresh, just like the warehouses.
Definitely. I like that for 2.0 version. Definitely. Getting sexier. Okay. I got you. Definitely. And we'll definitely put all the information about the Miner Corporation at thenewwarehouse.com as well, so people can easily find it. So Dennis, thank you once again for your time on the show today.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Enjoyed this episode? Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast, and for more content from the New Warehouse, find us on LinkedIn and YouTube. Links to subscribe can be found in the show notes, and for everything The New Warehouse, head to thenewwarehouse.com.